Think you know phrasal verbs? Think again. Native speakers use them constantly, and if you want to sound natural and understand real English, you can't afford to skip them. Welcome, learners, to 100 Advanced Phrasal Verbs, your fast track to fluent, confident English. We're not talking basic stuff like wake up or sit down. Today, you'll learn real-world expressions to take your English from pretty good to seriously impressive. But first, what exactly is a phrasal verb? A phrasal verb is when a verb teams up with one or two particles. These could be a preposition, an adverb, or both to create a new meaning. And what makes phrasal verbs so tricky? Their definitions most often have absolutely nothing to do with the original verb. For example, give up doesn't mean to give anything. It means to quit. And lucky you, phrasal verbs are everywhere, in everyday speech, songs, and movies. So if you want to understand how English is used in the big world out there, you've got to master them. First, let's kick things off with our category of workplace and professional life phrasal verbs. These are the kinds of expressions you'll often hear in business meetings or conversations around the office. And you might use these or read these in work emails. If you currently work in an office or you'll be joining the workplace soon, these phrasal verbs will help you sound more natural and confident in professional settings. Let's start with account for something. This is a transitive verb, so it always needs a direct object. And we can't separate this phrasal verb, so we can only say account for something, not account something for. This advanced phrasal verb has two common meanings. First, it can mean to explain the reason for something. Second, it can mean to make up a particular part or amount of something. Using our first definition, we could say, he couldn't account for the missing funds, meaning he had no explanation for where the money went. Our other example here, using our second definition, says, sales to local businesses account for over 75% of our revenue, which means local sales are the main source of income for this company. This is a really useful phrasal verb in both business settings and in academic writing. All right, let's talk about a phrasal verb that's all about making things happen, to bring something about. This phrasal verb means to cause something to happen. In other words, it's about making a change or result occur or happen. Now, bring about always needs an object. Usually, we talk about bringing about change. This is separable, so we could also say bring change about, but I think it's more common for our direct object to come after this phrasal verb and not between it. Like in our first example, the new CEO brought about major changes in the company, meaning the CEO made significant changes happen. Our second example says, the new product brought about a substantial increase in orders. This phrasal verb shows up a lot in formal business writing like company updates or reports. So it's a great one to recognize and use. Next up, we've got buckle down, and this one's got some serious focus and productivity energy. This is our first intransitive phrasal verb on our list, meaning it doesn't need a direct object. To buckle down means to start working seriously and with determination. We use this to talk about when we decide to focus on work and get things done. For example, I really need to buckle down if I want to finish this project before lunch. Here, the person is deciding to focus on work because they really want to get it done before their lunch break. Another example is, the whole team buckled down to lead the region in total sales. Here, the team decided to work hard to achieve a specific goal, to lead in total sales. We're only 3 phrasal verbs into our list, so let's buckle down and start number 4. Now let's talk about a phrasal verb that hits way too close to home for me, to burn out. Now this has a few definitions, but we'll just be going over our definition about productivity, or really lack of it. To burn out means to become extremely tired or sick from working too hard. And we can put a reflexive pronoun like myself, himself, or yourself in the middle if we want. That's why I have it in parentheses. We say this when someone pushes themselves too much and eventually needs to rest. Maybe you felt this way when work or school gets too hectic. You keep pushing yourself and you don't give yourself enough time to rest or relax. For example, he burned out after 2 months of working overtime, so he became exhausted from overworking. Our next example says, I would upload more often, but I'm afraid I'd burn myself out. Now this sentence is 100% about me. I work full-time, I have a family, and as much as I love creating content for this channel, sometimes I'm honestly just too busy to be bothered by it. Kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum for productivity, we've got churn something out. This phrasal verb means to produce something quickly and in large quantities, especially without much thought. It's often used to describe mass production or sometimes to talk about creating a lot of something without putting in much care, much attention, or much energy. This is a separable phrasal verb, so the object can go between churn and out. So our first example, the factory churns out thousands of units each day, could be switched to the factory churns thousands of units out each day. Our second example says, that author churns out a new novel every few months, meaning the author writes books quickly and new books are published and available for readers quite often. So writers like the late Agatha Christie and Isaac Asimov churned out a lot of novels during their lifetimes. Okay, so we all know what a drum is. You can hit it with your hands or hit it with drumsticks, and it's a noun. But drum can also be a verb, and it gets way more interesting when we turn it into the phrasal verb drum something up. This phrasal verb is transitive and it's separable, and it means to try to increase interest, support, or business for something, often by using promotions or a lot of effort. It's commonly used to talk about business and politics, where companies or political campaigns are working hard to attract attention and gain support. In the business world, we could say, they're trying to drum up sales before the holiday season. This sentence shows they are pushing to boost sales. And an example from the world of politics here says, the campaign team drummed up support among middle-class voters, meaning they worked hard to get voter support. This phrasal verb is a great one for both professional and persuasive communications. Now let's look at fall through, a phrasal verb about when things go wrong. This phrasal verb is intransitive, so it doesn't take a direct object. To fall through means to fail to happen or be completed, usually because something went wrong at the last minute. You often see this phrasal verb collocate or used with words like deal or plans. Like in our first sentence, the deal fell through when the investor backed out. This means the agreement wasn't finalized because the investor changed their mind for one reason or another. An example using fall through to talk about plans is, our travel plans fell through at the last minute. This tells us that the trip didn't happen, likely because of some unexpected issue. So when things don't go as planned or get canceled at the last minute, they fall through. Coming at number 8, we've got firm something up. This phrasal verb is transitive and separable. It requires an object, and that object can be placed either between the verb and the particle or after them. To firm something up means to make something more definite, certain, or finalized. We often use this when planning or scheduling, when details are vague or uncertain, so we need to firm them up and make them concrete or confirm them. For example, we could say we need to firm up the details before we present our proposal, meaning the details still need to be finalized before we present. Another example here says the band needs to firm up the dates before announcing their world tour. This sentence tells us that the schedule needs to be finalized and confirmed before it can be announced or shared publicly. Over here, we've got iron something out. This phrasal verb is transitive and separable and means to resolve small problems or disagreements, usually related to small issues that need to be clarified or smoothed over before finalizing a plan. You'll often hear this phrasal verb used with nouns like details, problems, or issues, as these are things that usually need to be ironed out in any process or negotiation. Our first example says, we still need to iron a few bugs out before launching the app. This means there are a few minor technical issues or bugs that need to be fixed before the app becomes available for download. Our next example says, let's iron out the details before we finalize the agreement. So there are a few small points that need to be resolved before they finalize their agreement. So until those are resolved, no one will be signing anything. Rounding out our first 10, we've got to phase something out. This phrasal verb is transitive and separable. To phase something out means to gradually or over time stop using or producing something. This is often used in business, technology, and when talking about sustainability, when organizations are transitioning from an old practice or product over time. Our first example here says, the company pledged to phase out plastic packaging by the end of the year. meaning they plan to gradually stop using plastic packaging in favor of some more eco-friendly options. Our next example says they're phasing out their old data centers for cloud-based storage. So the company is transitioning from using their older data centers to newer cloud-based options. This phrasal verb is useful when discussing long-term changes or improvements that organizations make over time. Now let's talk about pour over something. This phrasal verb is transitive and usually labeled in dictionaries as inseparable, but I've heard it used with direct objects in the middle in informal speech. To pour over something means to look at or study something very carefully and in great detail, like looking at something with a lot of focus. You'll see this phrasal verb used when someone is carefully examining things like documents, notes, or information. Like in our first sentence, she pored over the small print of the contract for hours. This means she studied the details of the contract very carefully. Small print refers to the tiny text found at the bottom of contracts or advertisements, which may contain important details or legal terms. And our next example here says, he spent the evening poring over his notes for his final exam. This sentence tells us that someone is carefully studying his notes to prepare for a test. So when you really want to talk about focusing on something closely, you can say you're poring over it. Let's check out the phrasal verb preside over something. This one's a great formal phrasal verb you might come across in business, legal, or organizational settings. This phrasal verb is transitive and inseparable. To preside over something means to be in charge of a meeting, event, or situation, often in a formal or an official role. For example, we could say the sales manager presided over the all-hands-on-deck meeting. An all-hands-on-deck meeting is one where everyone in the team, department, or company must attend. They can't miss it no matter what. This expression comes from life on ships. When there was a big task or emergency, the captain would call all hands on deck, meaning all crew members needed to be there and ready to work to handle the task or emergency. Our second example says, she presides over all new hire orientation sessions for the company. A new hire orientation session is training for new employees or workers to get familiar with the company's rules and expectations. So if someone is presiding over something, they're the one leading and making sure everything runs smoothly. Next up in our work-related phrasal verbs, we've got the transitive and inseparable phrasal verb to ride on something. And this means to depend on the success or the result of something. This expression is often used when the stakes are high, when an outcome could seriously affect someone's future, reputation, or success. For example, we could say a lot is riding on the outcome of the contract negotiations. This means that the result of the contract talks is very important. Maybe the future of the company or someone's job depends on it. Next up, we've got his future rides on this one job interview. In this sentence, we're saying that whether or not he gets this particular job could seriously affect his future plans. You'll often hear the phrasal verb ride on in professional or high-pressure situations like sports, politics, or business, anywhere that the outcome really matters. Wrapping up our work-related phrasal verbs, we've got zero in on something. This is transitive and inseparable, and it means to focus closely or target something with great attention or precision. It suggests narrowing your attention to a specific issue, person, or cause after gathering information or considering several possibilities. We could say they zeroed in on the cause of the accounting error. This means they carefully investigated and finally focused on what exactly caused the error. Maybe in a crime drama, you'll hear a sentence like, the detective zeroed in on the suspect. In this case, the detective may have considered several possibilities, but is now focused on just one specific person. You'll hear this phrasal verb used a lot in professional settings like investigations, when a business is problem solving, or in strategic meetings when teams are analyzing data or performance issues. Our second category of phrasal verbs are related to feelings and emotions. These expressions are perfect for describing your emotional state or understanding the feelings of others and will help you sound more fluent and express yourself with greater depth in everyday conversations or more sensitive discussions. The first of these phrasal verbs would also fit nicely with our conflict phrasal verbs later on, and that's back off. This is intransitive, so it doesn't need an object. And this means to move away from a situation, physically or emotionally, or to stop being aggressive or overly involved. It's usually used when someone is being too pushy, controlling, or confrontational, and needs to give a little space. Like in this sentence, you need to back off and let her make her own decisions about her career. In this sentence, someone is being too involved in another person's choices, and they're being told to stop interfering. Using our other definition, we have, the dog growled, so I backed off slowly. Here, back off is used literally, to move carefully away from a dangerous situation. You'll hear this phrasal verb used in both personal and professional situations, whether someone needs to ease up emotionally or physically step away from a tense moment. Next up, we've got the phrasal verb to bail someone or something out. Now, this has a few definitions, but the one we're going to go over today is transitive and separable. This means to help someone who's in trouble, especially legal or financial trouble. When you bail someone out, you're usually rescuing them from a difficult situation by giving money or support. Like in this sentence, his parents bailed him out of jail. This is the original meaning, where bail refers to pay money to get someone out of jail while they wait for a trial. Our next sentence says, the government bailed out the failing company. Here, bailout is used more broadly to mean to rescue a failing business with financial support. You'll often see this in business or news reports about government intervention in the economy. This phrasal verb is especially common when talking about crises, emergencies, or rescue efforts, whether personal or on a large scale. Because it often comes with emotions like stress, desperation, or relief, I put it in with our feelings phrasal verbs. So the next time you find yourself pulling someone out of a tough spot, you know exactly what to call it. Our next transitive and separable phrasal verb is to blot something out. And this has two meanings. First, it can mean to stop yourself from thinking about something unpleasant or painful, often by distracting yourself. Second, it can refer to blocking out light or visibility, like when something physically covers or obscures an area. Our first example says, he tried to blot out the painful memory. In this example, blot out means to suppress or forget something upsetting or difficult by not allowing it to enter your mind. We often do this with sad memories. And next we could say, thick storm clouds blotted out the sun. Here, blotted out means that the storm clouds blocked or obscured the sunlight, making the sky dark or overcast. We can use this phrasal verb both in emotional contexts, like trying to forget something, or physical descriptions, like describing a darkening sky. Next on our list, we've got be or get bogged down, and this means to become stuck or delayed in a situation, often because of too many details or complications. We often use this when someone gets overwhelmed or trapped in a task that they're doing, making it nearly impossible to move forward. We could say, we got bogged down in paperwork. In this example, the person is overwhelmed by the volume or amount of paperwork, preventing them from making any sort of progress. Next up, maybe you've heard your teacher say something like this in a writing class. Don't get bogged down writing your introduction. Come back to it when you've finished the body. Here, bogged down means getting caught up in one part of a task, which could delay everything else. The best advice is to keep moving and return to the difficult part later. This phrasal verb is often used in both professional and everyday contexts, especially when dealing with tasks or projects that become very complicated or slow-moving. Now, this next one, to brush someone off, is not the kind of brushing you do to your hair in the morning. It's something you do to someone when you treat them like they aren't even there. Brush someone off is transitive and separable and means to dismiss or ignore someone, usually in a rude or indifferent way. It shows a lack of interest or concern in the person, in a casual and dismissive manner. We use this when describing situations where someone feels disregarded or treated with a lack of respect. Like in our first sentence, he tried to apologize for being late, but she brushed him off. In this case, brush off means that she ignored his apology or didn't give it any attention, showing a lack of interest in what he had to say. And I felt hurt when my best friend brushed me off like that. Here, the speaker feels ignored or dismissed by their friend, so there is an emotional impact. Now let's travel on over to the dairy aisle of the supermarket for butter someone up, which is transitive and separable and has absolutely nothing to do with milk. This means to flatter someone, so to give praise or compliments in order to gain their favor or get something you want from them. It's used when someone is obviously being overly nice or giving a lot of compliments, with the goal of benefiting from that person in some way later on. Here we have the example, he's acting especially nice to butter up the boss. In this example, butter up means he's being extra kind or flattering to the boss to try to get a favor or promotion later. And here we have the sentence, the child buttered up his parents before his birthday. Here the child is trying to flatter or be extra sweet to his parents in the hopes of receiving something special for his upcoming birthday. The vast majority of the time, this phrasal verb is used in a negative way. All this buttering up with compliments isn't sincere, but really just done for personal gain. Here we have the transitive and separable phrasal verb to cheer someone on, which means to encourage someone by shouting or showing support, usually during a competition or a challenge. We use this to give motivation or offer enthusiasm to help someone succeed. We use this phrasal verb in contexts like sports, performances, or any event where someone is trying to achieve something and others are offering support. We could say the crowd cheered on the runners. In this situation, the crowd is supporting and encouraging the runners, to help boost their spirits during the hard race. Our next example says, my friends cheered me on during the sports stacking competition. So for those unfamiliar, sports stacking is a competition where competitors stack cups as quickly as possible. So in this sentence, the speaker's friends are offering support and encouragement to help them perform well in the competition. Sometimes we have something we really need to share with someone, but we only want to tell someone we trust, like our transitive and separable phrasal verb, confide in someone, which means to share a secret or private matter with someone you trust. This phrasal verb is used when you're telling someone something personal, often because you feel comfortable with them and believe they won't tell anyone. It's used in situations where someone shares maybe personal struggles or sensitive information, and it's important that the person they're telling is absolutely trustworthy. Our first example says, she confided in me about her problems at work. In this sentence, the speaker is expressing that the person trusted them enough to share something personal about their work situation. Maybe she just wanted to get it off her chest, or maybe she was looking for advice about how to proceed. Our next example says, the student confided in his teacher about his family's financial issues. Here the student is revealing something private to the teacher because perhaps this information is embarrassing and they trust him or her to not tell anyone else. When we drag someone into something, we involve them in a situation that they don't want to be a part of, often against their will. This has a negative connotation and suggests that the person being dragged in is unwilling or reluctant. Like in this example, don't drag me into your argument with our boss. In this situation, the speaker is asking not to be involved in the situation, the argument. They probably don't want to take sides or deal with this conflict. Our next example says, she got dragged into a family feud. Here the speaker is describing how the person was reluctantly involved in a family conflict, and most probably didn't want to be involved in it. So remember, use this when someone is forced into a situation or conflict that they would much rather not be a part of. Now for our feelings phrasal verbs, we've got to dwell on something. This is transitive and inseparable. It means to keep thinking or talking about something sad, unpleasant, or troubling, often excessively. So thinking about these negative things way too much. We use this to say that the person is unwilling or unable to move on from whatever the issue is. Like in this sentence, stop dwelling on your mistakes. In this example, the speaker is telling someone not to keep thinking about or focusing on past problems. They are encouraging them to let go and move forward with their life. And my next example says, he keeps dwelling on the past. Here the speaker is talking about someone who is constantly reflecting on past events, which are probably preventing them from living a fulfilling and happy life. So we use this phrasal verb when we want someone to stop focusing on things that cannot be changed and start looking forward. Our next phrasal verb, ease up, is intransitive and has a few meanings, but the most common uses are to gradually stop or become less intense, or to treat someone less severely. Using our first definition, we could say, the rain is finally easing up. So the rain is becoming lighter and less intense. Using our second definition, we could say, he should ease up on his little brother. Here they're saying to treat their little brother better, maybe with more kindness or being less strict with him. This phrasal verb often suggests that something is reducing in intensity or that a person is being asked to take a gentler approach. You might also hear it used when advising someone to moderate their behavior or actions. I hope you didn't start this video on an empty stomach because I'm going to talk about eating, but I'm not going to mention anything about food. To eat away at is transitive and inseparable. It means to slowly damage or destroy something or to cause someone continual worry or distress over time. So we could say the guilt of flushing his sister's fish down the toilet ate away at him for years. In this example, the phrase is used to talk about how bad he felt for a long period of time for killing his sister's pet fish. And our next sentence says, Rust was eating away at the car door. In this sentence, we're talking about something physical. The rust is damaging the car door and it's spreading. It's eating away at the car door over time. Next up, fall for has a couple of definitions. This is transitive and inseparable and can mean either to fall in love with someone or to be tricked or deceived by someone. Using our first definition, we could say, he really fell for her after just one date, meaning he fell in love with someone really quickly after just going out once. And using our second example, we could say, I can't believe you fell for that scam. Why would you believe Brad Pitt fell in love with you when he's never met you? Here, fall for is used to show being tricked or deceived. So maybe this person was tricked into sending money to a stranger who posed or pretended to be Brad Pitt over messaging apps or on the internet. If you're looking for a phrasal verb with a cold, distant vibe, then freeze someone out is the one I'll describe. This transitive, inseparable, cold as ice phrasal verb means to exclude someone intentionally or on purpose from a group, activity, or situation. Like in this sentence, after the disagreement, they froze her out of the team. So this person was excluded or left out from the team due to some sort of conflict. And his colleagues froze him out after speaking up. Here, this describes how someone feels excluded at work after expressing his opinion. We use this phrasal verb in situations where someone is deliberately left out or ignored, like in social or professional settings. All right, our next transitive and inseparable phrasal verb is not about making a sad face. When someone frowns on something, it means they disapprove of it or think negatively of it. It's like that feeling you get when you see something that just doesn't sit right with you. For example, my parents frown on staying out late. Here we're saying that staying out late is definitely not approved by the parents. Or she frowns on her husband's smoking habit. In this situation, she's not a fan of that habit. She frowns on it. You'll hear frown on when talking about disapproving something that's personal or family related, like behaviors, actions, or choices that someone just isn't happy about. Our next phrasal verb is about giving way too much attention to someone or something. To fuss over someone or something means to pay too much attention to someone or something, often in an overly worried or unnecessary way. It's transitive and inseparable. For example, we could say, he fussed over the decorations all the way up to the start of the party. In this example, it shows he was overly concerned with the decorations, trying to make them perfect even though the party was about to start. Our next example says, stop fussing over him, he's fine. This is when someone is way over cared for. Maybe they're perfectly fine, but someone, usually a parent or grandparent, is just hovering over them, making sure they're okay every second to the point of being really irritating. Now let's get into one with a little bit of attitude. Look down on someone. Now maybe you've met someone who acts like they're better than everyone else. This is a phrase for them. To look down on means to think someone is inferior, beneath you, or less important than you. To look down on is transitive and inseparable. I've got this example here. He looks down on people who don't have a college degree. This sentence tells us that he thinks he's better than others just because he went to college. Not cool, bro. Or how about this one? I hate the way she looks down on others. This one's saying that someone's got a bad attitude, like, hey, why do you think you're so good? All right, time to dig deep because we're talking about muster something up. And no, I'm not talking about mustard, the stuff you can put on a hot dog. This is muster, not mustard. To muster something up means to gather some kind of inner resource like strength, courage, or energy, especially when facing something tough. It's transitive, inseparable, and often collocates with words like strength, courage, or energy. So muster up the strength, muster up the courage, or muster up the energy. Like in this sentence, he mustered up the courage to ask her out. He probably stared at his phone for hours before finally sending that text message. It took him a while to muster up the courage to ask her out on a date. And this example, totally relatable. On Mondays, it's difficult to muster up the energy to go to work. I mean, in all honesty, who hasn't hit the snooze button a few times before dragging themselves out of bed on a Monday morning? So use this phrasal verb when talking about trying to power through something that's pushing you out of your comfort zone. This next phrasal verb is about healing what's broken, especially emotionally. We're talking about patch something up. And nope, we're not sewing your old socks to get more mileage out of them here. To patch something up is a phrasal verb that means to repair relationships after there have been some problems. It's transitive and separable. For example, they patched up their friendship after the argument. So maybe some harsh or mean words were said, but they were able to work through it. They're gonna continue being friends. It just warms the heart, right? And this one, let's patch things up and move on. So they're offering to fix the problem, forgive, and move forward. So move on in this example is a bonus phrasal verb that, when talking about emotions, means to accept the situation has changed and be ready to deal with new experiences. So to no longer think about that old problem and, to put it in the past. Now this next phrasal verb is all about giving people a boost, and that's to perk someone up. This means to make someone feel happier or more energetic. Helping them turn that frown upside down. It's transitive and separable, and this one's true about me. A cup of coffee always perks me up in the morning. I really don't know how I could handle my irritating commute to school without it. Or how about this one? Getting the acceptance letter really perked him up. Some people need coffee to perk up, and most people you can perk up with just a compliment, and that costs absolutely nothing. So go say something nice to someone and perk them up. Now this one's about making them feel worse, to push someone around. No, there's no real physical pushing or shoving here, usually. This means to bully or dominate someone by being bossy or aggressive. Push around is transitive and separable. Take this sentence, he always pushes his classmates around. This means he's acting in a controlling or aggressive way around others, like a bully. Or how about this sentence, don't let them push you around at work. That's solid advice. It means don't let others treat you unfairly just because they think they can. If someone's pushing you around, stand tall and try not to let them get under your skin. Speaking of irritating people and things, we've got our transitive and inseparable phrasal verb to put up with. This one's about tolerating or enduring something unpleasant or someone unpleasant. Let's check out our first sentence. I can't put up with my coworker's bad attitude anymore. So this person has clearly hit their limit with this negative coworker. I'm sure you've all worked with someone like that. And then this example, she puts up with a lot at her job, but still manages to keep a good attitude. So for this person, despite everything going on at work, all the terrible, negative things, she's still hanging in there and keeping a positive attitude. Put up with is a useful phrasal verb when you're talking about dealing with a difficult person or a difficult situation that you just can't change. Like sticking with a bad work environment because you need the money, or putting up with a family member who is negatively impacting you, but you can't really say anything because, they're family. Now sometimes when there's a conflict, we've got to take sides. Support one side instead of the other. That's where our phrasal verb side with someone comes in. This means to support or agree with one person in an argument or a situation. It's transitive and inseparable. I've got this sentence here, she always sides with her best friend. So that kind of loyalty is nice. Unless, of course, you're on the other side of the argument. Basically, she's siding with her best friend no matter what. And now, this sentence is for all 30 people who watched my Learn English with Marvel Comics videos. I love you. The Scarlet Witch sided with Captain America in the conflict over the Sokovia Accords. So that was a moment when Wanda Maximoff said, "Sorry, Tony, I'm with Cap on this one," in Captain America Civil War. So if there's a debate, a disagreement, or even a superhero battle at an airport, and you pick a team or person to support, you're siding with them. Just make sure you're picking the right side. This next phrasal verb is something you definitely don't want happening to you. Single someone out. And this means to choose one person for special attention. And no, not the good kind of attention. This is definitely negative. It's transitive and separable. So our first sentence says, don't single her out for something everyone did. Yeah, real unfair move here. Blaming one person when everyone did the same thing. It's like middle school all over again. The whole class is making noise, but Mr. Brown only chooses to yell at me and move my seat. Definitely not cool. And then we have, the teacher singled me out in front of the class even though I wasn't the only student to score poorly. So when you single someone out, you're basically pointing a spotlight at them. And it's not the good kind of spotlight. When you see someone doing this next phrasal verb, you just want to roll your eyes. To suck up to someone is transitive and inseparable. It means to be way too nice to someone, usually someone in power, just to get on their good side or for some kind of benefit later. And we all know someone who does this way too much. Like in our first example, he's always sucking up to the boss to get on his good side. So he's probably giving compliments about the boss's necktie and smiles a little way too much every time he sees him. And this next example says, stop sucking up to the teacher, it's obvious. So this is someone who's gone way too far and all of his or her classmates are noticing. This phrasal verb is definitely negative, so these compliments really aren't genuine. They're just a strategy to score points. So don't be that person. All right, let's move on to our next category of phrasal verbs, money and finances. Because let's be honest, money talks and I wish it would stop saying goodbye. In this section, we'll be diving into phrasal verbs that deal with earning it, spending it, saving it, and losing it. It doesn't matter if you're someone with your mind on your money or your money on your mind, these phrasal verbs will help you sound more fluent. Let's start this category with something super savvy. To capitalize on something is to take advantage of a situation, opportunity, or resource to get a benefit. Maybe more money, maybe a better job, maybe a strategic win. It's transitive and inseparable, and an example using this says, the company capitalized on the social media trend to boost sales. Basically, they saw something trending online, maybe made some similar content, and boom, their sales went up. And then we have, she capitalized on her language skills to get a better job. So she used her language skills as a stepping stone to level up in her career. Depending on your tone, when you use this, it can describe someone who's being clever, or to describe someone who's being a little sneaky or opportunistic. Regardless, it's a good one to know if you're talking about how to turn a situation to your advantage. Next up, we've got a transitive and inseparable phrasal verb that you can stick in your wallet. To cash in on something means to take advantage of a situation to make more money or to gain a benefit, sometimes in a way that's opportunistic. It's often used when someone profits from circumstances or a situation that they didn't create, and sometimes it's not used positively. For example, we could say the hotel is cashing in on the sudden influx of tourists to the area. What's going on here? The hotel is taking advantage of the fact that there's more tourists coming. The word influx in this sentence means the arrival of a large number of people or things. This next example is not positive at all. We've got scammers trying to cash in on the natural disaster by setting up a fake donation website. This is exploiting a tragedy for personal gain and most definitely illegal. So cash in on can have a negative meaning when it sounds like someone is taking advantage of a bad situation. But it can also be used to talk about smart business moves or quick thinking. As you know, it's better to give than to receive. So we've got chip something in. This transitive and separable phrasal verb means to contribute money, effort, or any other resource toward a shared goal. For example, we've got everyone chipped in for the birthday gift, which means everyone put a little bit of money together to buy a present for someone. So everyone contributed. Our next one says, I chipped in a few dollars to buy our colleague a retirement gift. So that person added a small amount of money to the group effort to help out with the cost of a present. This phrasal verb is casual and used when people are voluntarily contributing. No one is being forced. You'll often hear people drop the object and just say chip in when the context makes it clear what's being contributed. Next on our list is to clean someone or something out. And this transitive, separable phrasal verb will leave you broke as a joke and means to steal or take everything from a person or a place, especially when it comes to money or valuable items. You can also use it when someone's used up all their resources, often because of spending or unexpected costs. For example, the thieves that cleaned out the store last week are still at large. This is saying the robbers took everything of value from the store. Also useful in this sentence is the idiom at large, which means a criminal or suspect is still on the loose. They haven't been arrested or put in jail yet. Our next sentence says, their extravagant wedding cleaned the couple out, which means that the wedding was so expensive that the couple spent all of their savings. Earlier, we had the phrasal verb eat away at, but now we've got the transitive inseparable phrasal verb to eat into something. This one is all about gradually or over time reducing or using up a resource, like money, time, energy, or materials, especially more than you expected or wanted. Take this example. We were doing fine financially, but some unexpected repairs have eaten into our savings lately. This means that the repairs have been slowly using up the couple's savings. Or this sentence, taking on all these extra duties has really eaten into my time. The speaker is saying that all the extra work has been, using up all their time, leaving less time for other things. So this phrasal verb has a real concerning tone. If something's eating into your time or eating into your money, it's little by little, but it's to the point where it's starting to get noticeable and concern you. If you've ever had to pay too much money when you didn't want to, then this next phrasal verb is perfect for you. Fork out, fork over, and fork up are all used to talk about paying money for something, usually when you don't want to or think that something is too expensive. Here's how it works. Fork out and fork over are informal and transitive, so they need an object. While fork up is even more informal and really more like slang, and you can use it intransitively without an object. It's very casual, so use it with your friends. Our first example says, I had to fork out over $300 for car repairs. This means, I didn't really want to spend that much money, but the car broke down and I needed to. Our next sentence says, we forked up a lot for our family's vacation to Disney World. This means that the family trip was outrageously expensive and you reluctantly spent that much money. Probably you just did it for the kids. This is definitely informal language and commonly used in spoken English. Next up on our list, we've got the phrasal verb to live off. This is transitive and inseparable. It means depending on someone or something for your main source of money or support. This could mean relying on someone else's money, like living off your parents, or using your savings or investments to get by. Now, careful when using this because it often has a bit of a negative or judgmental tone, especially when it refers to someone living off others without really contributing much in return. For example, we could say he lives off the money he received from a malpractice lawsuit. Here, the lawsuit money is his main source of income. So the word malpractice in this sentence is when a professional, like a doctor or lawyer, does something so wrong or so careless in their job that it causes harm to their patient or client. Our next sentence says, the couple struggles to live off their retirement savings. In this sentence, they're just barely surviving financially on what they saved up for their retirement. Depending on how you use it, living off someone or something can sound neutral, just like describing the situation. Or it can be a bit critical, especially if you're talking about someone depending too much on someone else without offering anything in return. Sometimes you want to talk about making money and lots of it. For these situations, we have the transitive and separable phrasal verb rake in. To rake something in means to earn a lot of money. It's the kind of phrase you use when someone's pulling in cash in big amounts, often faster or easier than expected. Think of it like collecting money, like collecting leaves with a rake. Our first example says their company raked in millions last year, so this business made a huge amount of money. Then there's this example. She's been raking in a lot of money since starting her own business. So she's killing it, financially speaking, with her business that she started up. It's been a massive success. This phrasal verb is usually pretty informal and sometimes carries a bit of envy to it. For our next one, if you've ever felt like you were cheated or deceived when buying something, then this one's for you. To rip someone off means to charge someone more than something is actually worth. So, to give them a poor value for their money. This phrasal verb is transitive and separable, and it's used when someone's being taken advantage of, like in a scam or when someone is selling something or charging for a service at a price that's way too high for what it is. Check out this example here. The seller on FB Marketplace ripped me off with a knockoff bag. A knockoff is a copy of a more popular and more expensive product. So this person paid way too much for a fake designer bag that wasn't even close to being worth the price. And our next one says, many shops in that city rip off tourists. So these shops are basically taking advantage of tourists by overpricing items that they know they're unfamiliar with. This phrasal verb is definitely informal and critical, and we use it when we feel like we've been unfairly overcharged or tricked into a bad deal. So be a smart shopper and avoid getting ripped off. All right, let's keep things moving with Part 4, Advanced Phrasal Verbs about physical actions. These expressions are super common when describing how people and things move. Whether it's walking, running, or sneaking around, you'll hear these used in action scenes, casual conversations, and in storytelling. Using these accurately will help you paint a clear picture and sound much more natural when describing actions and motion. Let's talk about to box someone or something in. A super useful phrasal verb when you want to describe limiting someone's freedom or restricting their options. It's like creating a barrier that traps someone or something, either physically or in a more metaphorical or figurative way. This can be used to talk about feeling trapped by rules that give you no options, or even a situation where you're physically blocked in, like when a car can't move because it's surrounded. So our first example here says, all of these rules are boxing me in. So these rules are restricting me and limiting my choices. Maybe these rules are limiting how creative I can be. And our next one says, 2 vans boxed our car in and we couldn't get out. This one's literal. The vans parked too close to our car, so we were completely blocked in and couldn't move out of our parking space. This phrasal verb is informal and often comes with a negative tone, especially when you're talking about being restrictive or you're complaining. This next phrasal verb can describe 2 very different things. To break down can either talk about a mechanical failure or an emotional meltdown. In the first definition, when something breaks down, it stops working, and we usually use this to talk about a vehicle or a machine. For example, my car broke down while driving on the highway. So the car just gave up and refused to keep going. The driver most likely had to pull over and wait for a tow truck to take the car to a mechanic. Our second definition is about when someone loses emotional control, like Rachel Zegler when someone makes fun of her performance in the Snow White remake. For example, we could say she broke down in tears during the meeting and took the rest of the day off. So this must have been a pretty intense meeting and the person had to go home and calm down afterwards. This phrasal verb can be used in both casual or serious contexts, so you hear it in all sorts of conversations. Now this next phrasal verb is all about giving someone a good scare. To creep up, on, or behind someone means to sneak up, approach someone quietly, and then surprise someone or something when they don't expect it. This phrasal verb is transitive and inseparable. For example, we could say the girl crept up on her brother and scared him. So maybe she walked quietly behind him and then bam, gave him a good scare. This next one says, the mugger crept up behind the woman and snatched her purse before a bystander chased him down. So a mugger is a criminal who attacks or robs people in public. In this example, there's no noise, no warning, just sudden action. He approached from behind, making sure she had no clue, and snatched or stole the purse. Our next phrasal verb is transitive, separable, and really informal. To doll oneself up means to make oneself more attractive by putting on makeup and wearing nice clothes. This phrasal verb is a bit playful and a little old-fashioned, and it's about describing a woman putting in extra effort to look amazing. For example, we could say she dolled herself up before heading out for a night on the town. She took the time to dress up and make herself look extra fabulous before going out. In this sentence, we also have the useful expression, a night on the town, which means to spend an evening enjoying oneself in downtown restaurants, bars, or nightclubs. Next here, we've got this sentence, she rarely dolls herself up, but when she does, she's an absolute smoke show. This one's saying she usually doesn't put much effort into how she looks, but when she does, she's gorgeous. The noun smoke show here is a slang term that describes a person, particularly a woman, who is very attractive and sexually appealing. Maybe you'll use this to talk about women with your bros, but don't use this to talk about your coworkers with your company's human resources manager. Now we all know the verb flush like flush the toilet, but in our transitive separable phrasal verb, flush someone or something out, it means to force someone or something to come out of hiding. So what you do to make them reveal themselves or come out into the open. You might have heard this one used in police dramas. For example, we could say they flushed the suspect out of the abandoned building with smoke bombs. This means they used smoke bombs to force the suspect to leave the building so that they could catch him. Our next sentence says, we made a lot of noise to flush the raccoon out of the garage. Here, they created a lot of noise to scare the raccoon out of hiding. This is a useful phrase when making someone or something come out of the shadows. Next up is our transitive and inseparable phrasal verb to gain on someone or something. This is all about getting closer to someone or something that's ahead of you, especially when talking about a race or a competition. You're making progress and catching up. Maybe you're chasing someone in a competition or moving forward in a business rivalry. For example, the cyclist is gaining on the other team's lead rider. This means the cyclist is getting closer to the leading rider of the other team, so they have a good chance of taking the lead soon. Our next example from the world of business says, the new company is gaining on the competition faster than expected. Here the company is making faster progress than anyone thought was possible and gaining more and more market share as it tries to beat its competitor. This is a great phrasal verb to use when you are in competition and fighting hard to be number one. Continuing, we have the transitive separable phrasal verb, hand something down. This is all about passing something from one generation to the next, like a family or cultural tradition, jewelry, or recipes. For example, we could say, my grandfather handed his pocket watch down to me. This means my grandfather passed the pocket watch to me as a gift to keep it in our family. Our next example says, this cheesecake recipe was handed down to me by my mother. In other words, the recipe was passed from one generation to the next, so the family can continue enjoying it even after the mother is gone. This phrasal verb is really useful when talking about passing what matters from one generation to the next. Our next phrasal verb is hunker down, and this is intransitive. To hunker down means to take shelter, prepare to stay in place, or settle in for a period of time, often for protection or to achieve something. For example, we could say the team ordered pizza and hunkered down to finish the project. This means that the team is getting ready for a lot of hard work ahead, knowing it's going to be a long night of effort. Or this sentence, as the tornado ripped through their town, students hunkered down in the school's hallways. In this case, the students are taking cover and staying safe until the tornado passes. You'll often hear this phrasal verb used when people are preparing for something serious or when they're focused intently on a task. Sometimes we just need to let go, and that's where this transitive and inseparable phrasal verb comes in. To part with something means to give up or let go of something you're attached to emotionally. It's that feeling when you're reluctant to give something up, often because it's important to you or has a special place in your heart. For example, we could say, I didn't want to part with my books, but shipping them across the country would have been too expensive. Here, the speaker is emotionally attached to the books, but is forced to let them go for practical reasons. This person is moving and it would have been too expensive to ship them. Or this sentence, she couldn't part with her old clothes even though she hadn't worn them in years. In this example, the speaker struggles with letting go of clothes she no longer wears. This shows she is emotionally attached to these old clothes and really can't get rid of them as a result. We use this phrasal verb when there's difficulty or hesitation in letting go of something. So the next time you're hanging on to something and you just can't bring yourself to get rid of it, you'll know exactly what phrasal verb to use. Now, I hope this transitive separable phrasal verb doesn't make you too hungry. To sandwich someone or something between someone or something means to place someone or something between two other people or things in a way that feels tight or cramped. You can use this literally when talking about a physical space like a crowded bus or a flight, or metaphorically when talking about scheduling or organizing things, especially when time or space is tight. For example, we could say, I was sandwiched between two strangers on the flight. This means that the speaker was squeezed uncomfortably between two people. Not the most pleasant feeling. Our next example says, they sandwiched the meeting between two longer ones. This is a scheduling situation where a shorter meeting gets squeezed into a packed day, wedged between two longer meetings. This phrasal verb definitely has a negative connotation because, no one wants to be in a tight spot. If you've ever been so mad that you just walked away in anger, then this one's for you. To storm off is intransitive and means to leave angrily and suddenly, maybe even slamming a door behind you for drama. This one's used when someone walks away in a way that it's clear they are angry or frustrated. For example, he stormed off after the argument with his supervisor. Here we're talking about a quick, angry exit after a heated disagreement with his supervisor. Or this example, after hearing the bad news, he stormed off and slammed the door behind him. Now that's not just walking away, that's a dramatic exit that shows frustration. This is a good one to use when expressing emotional intensity, whether it's anger, frustration, or being totally fed up with the situation. Next up, have you ever had that magical moment when you find something by chance? That's exactly what stumble on or stumble upon or stumble across means. Now this phrasal verb is transitive and inseparable, and we can use the particles on, upon, or across interchangeably. We use this to talk about unexpected discoveries. You're not looking for anything specific, but hey, there it is. You find something by chance. For example, I stumbled on an old photo album while tidying up the basement. Here, you're casually cleaning and out of nowhere, whoa, you find some old photos. Or we stumbled upon a charming cafe while exploring downtown. So in this example, you're just walking through the city and happen to find a charming cafe. You didn't expect it. Nice, right? Continuing here, we've got our transitive and separable phrasal verb to weed someone or something out. This is used to talk about eliminating or removing someone or something unwanted, often through a process of selection or judgment. For example, we could say, which candidate do you think we should weed out first? It's a way of saying that we have too many applicants. Which ones should be off this list and which ones should we call back for an interview? Or in the world of publishing, we could say, the peer review process helps journals weed out low-quality submissions before publication. Here, we're talking about getting rid of those less than perfect submissions to make sure that only the best make it through and are published. We use weed out when talking about starting with a lot of options or choices and then narrowing them down to only those of the highest quality. Rounding out our movement and action phrasal verbs, we got the transitive, separable phrasal verb, whip something up. This means to prepare or make something quickly, whether it's a meal, a solution, or even a burst of enthusiasm or emotion. We use this to talk about getting things done in a flash. For example, we could say, I'll whip up dinner as soon as I get home. Here the speaker is saying, I'll get dinner ready fast, probably with whatever I can find in the house. When someone whips up support or excitement, they're creating or stirring up strong feelings. Like in this example, the politician whipped up support for his party's policy proposals with his fiery speech. This doesn't just mean that he convinced people. It means he got them fired up and ready to rally behind him using some high-energy persuasion. So be sure to use this phrasal verb the next time you're cooking up a storm or stirring up some enthusiasm. All right, next up is advanced phrasal verbs about communication. We have some to use when you're having a heart-to-heart conversation with a friend, when you're delivering a presentation, or when you're just chatting casually. These phrasal verbs will help you describe how people speak, how messages are shared, and even how misunderstandings happen. You can use these to make your English sound more dynamic and expressive in all kinds of conversations. Here's a good one to use if you find yourself singing or saying something loud and proud. To belt something out means to sing or say something loud and full of energy. We usually use this transitive and separable phrasal verb to talk about singing, but sometimes you'll hear it used to talk about how someone delivers a speech or a presentation. For example, she belted out her country's anthem with pride. This isn't just any ordinary singing. This is full of emotion, showing how much she loves her country. Now, this next example isn't about national anthems. It says, he loves belting out 80s hair metal ballads while driving. So imagine someone with their windows down, singing Poison's Every Rose Has Its Thorn at the top of their lungs. No shame in that, right? I can think of worse things to sing while driving. When you belt something out, you're definitely putting your heart into it. This next one has nothing to do with singing, but is all about speaking without thinking. To blurt something out means to say something without thinking first. This transitive and separable phrasal verb is when something is said suddenly without thinking. Usually it just comes out in a rush and you didn't mean to say it in the first place. It's when your mouth is acting faster than your brain. Like in this example, he blurted out the answer without raising his hand. Oops, he skipped the polite step of raising his hand. And then there's this film spoiler. As soon as the movie started, she blurted out the plot twist and ruined it for everyone. So here, she totally spoiled or gave away the surprise or plot twist for everyone else. So when you blurt something out, it's usually because you weren't thinking enough about what you were going to say first. Kind of like when you accidentally tell a secret or share information that wasn't meant to be shared. Sometimes you think you have a great idea, but you're not totally sure about it. What do? You bounce it off someone. This phrasal verb means to share your thoughts or ideas with someone else in order to get their feedback advice, or their opinion before making a decision. For example, "Can I bounce a business idea off you?" is a way of asking someone their thoughts on your ideas before you start spending much time, energy, or money on a project. Or maybe you're preparing for an important meeting. You might say, "I want to bounce a few marketing ideas off you before tomorrow's meeting." This shows that you're trying to really fine-tune your ideas and need a little bit of help from someone else before your big day. Now this next one is to describe someone who's talking in a dull and boring way. To drone on is intransitive and means to speak in a dull, monotone, and often boring way for what feels like forever. It's usually about something uninteresting and irrelevant. Hopefully you don't think I'm droning on when presenting this information. An example using this phrasal verb is, "The professor droned on for the entire period." This tells us that the professor's lecture was tiresome and probably left everyone in the room counting the minutes until it was over. Maybe you have a friend or a coworker who just doesn't know when to stop talking when it's something you couldn't care less about. Like in this sentence, "He droned on about his fishing trip and I almost fell asleep." So maybe he was speaking at length about fishing and it's something you just aren't interested in. So you almost fell asleep. When someone drones on, they're usually talking in a slow and unenthusiastic way, so it's hard to stay focused. Sometimes you gotta find a way to make something complicated simpler for someone to understand. You've got to dumb it down so that it makes sense for everyone. This transitive and separable phrasal verb means to simplify something, sometimes a little too much, to make it easier for people to understand, especially when the topic is pretty complex. For example, the researchers had to dumb down their findings for the television interview. Here, the researchers had to simplify their super complex scientific data for a TV audience, which probably didn't know much about the topic. Or this sentence, the editor asked the writer to dumb the article down for the magazine's younger audience. In this case, the writer is asked to make the article more accessible by using simpler language because readers are likely younger and have less background knowledge about the topic. Our next phrasal verb is transitive, separable, and used to describe pushing someone to do something they probably wouldn't normally do. To egg someone on means to encourage or persuade someone to do something, usually something risky, reckless, or bad, even though you know it might get them into trouble. This phrasal verb is definitely negative because it usually leads to people doing things they wouldn't normally do. For example, we could say, "His friends egged him on to jump off the bridge." Here, his friends are basically persuading him to take a huge, risky leap without thinking about the consequences. Or this example, the teenager mooned the police officer after his friends egged him on. So here, the verb moon means to show someone your bare butt to insult them. So this teenager did something rude and inappropriate because his friends pushed him to do it. Who knows, maybe he got a taser to his cheeks as a result. So yeah, egging someone on isn't the best thing to do, and it can lead to some pretty wild or pretty regrettable decisions. Sometimes you need a little more information. When that's the case, you can ask someone to expand on it. When you expand on something, you're giving more details or adding more information about something. We use this transitive and separable phrasal verb to give extra details needed to make what we say clearer and more understandable. For example, if someone says, "Could you expand on your answer?" they're simply asking you to explain your response a bit more or provide some additional details. It's not a criticism of what you said, but it's an invitation for more information. In our next sentence we have, "She expanded on her proposal during the presentation." This means that she took her initial proposal and went deeper into the details to help everyone better understand what she was talking about. So this is a really useful one when in professional settings, or just when chatting with friends to ask for more details or more information. Now here we've got the transitive and separable phrasal verb to explain something away. And maybe you've done this when you've done something wrong and you try to justify or excuse whatever it was you did rather than just saying sorry and try to make it better. It's like saying, "Oh, it wasn't that bad," or "It's not really my fault," even though it completely was. Usually when people try to explain something away, they try to make the mistake or problem seem less serious than it actually is. Like in this sentence, he tried to explain away his mistake, but no one was buying it. This means that the person tried to make an excuse for the mistake, and I use the phrase "to not buy it" which means to not believe it, so no one was convinced. For this example, he knew there was no way to explain away his behavior, so he kept his mouth shut. Here, the person realized that his action couldn't be justified, so instead of trying to make excuses, he chose to stay quiet. When you do wrong, it might be tempting to try to explain it away, but it's usually far better to just admit you were wrong and try to make things better. All right, time to fess up. Have you ever been caught doing something wrong and had to fess up? When you fess up, you're admitting something, usually something wrong, embarrassing, or something you've been trying to hide. It's like saying, okay, you caught me, and admitting what you've done. Our first example says, come on, fess up. Did you pocket my rare Pokemon card? Here, someone's asking if the other person pocketed or stole their Pokemon card. Or there's this example, he finally fessed up to eating all the cookies in the cookie jar. In this example, the person admitted that they ate all the cookies. And they probably did this after avoiding responsibility for a while. So remember, fess up is casual and used when someone is being asked to admit something. Next here, I've got a phrasal verb that's perfect for when you are understood clearly. To get something across is transitive and separable and means to successfully communicate an idea or message. So whatever you're saying is completely understood by the listener. For example, I hope I got my point across during the meeting. Here the speaker is wondering if their ideas were clear to everyone in the meeting. Or this one, she's good at getting complex concepts across to her students. This means she's really talented at explaining difficult ideas in a way that her students can understand. This phrasal verb works in both formal and informal situations, whether you're talking about a business meeting or just explaining something to your friends. Sometimes we don't want to say everything, so we keep something back. This is about withholding or keeping information to yourself. It's not like, oops, I forgot, but it's more like deliberately or on purpose keeping something to yourself. When you keep something back, you're choosing not to share details. This could be for personal reasons or to keep some kind of strategic advantage. For example, I think the seller is keeping something back from us. Here, the speaker is suspicious that the seller is deliberately hiding some information from them, probably to avoid revealing the full truth in order to complete the sale. Or there's this one. The witness admitted she had kept some details back during her first interview with the investigators. This shows that the witness intentionally or on purpose didn't share everything with the investigators. This could be because she wanted to protect someone or to protect herself. You'll hear this phrasal verb in both formal and informal situations. It's a great one to use when talking about someone hiding something for a reason, whether it's to get ahead, stay safe, or simply not reveal the whole truth. So when you're not revealing the whole truth, you're keeping it back. Now let's wrap up this section with this useful transitive and separable phrasal verb. If you spring something on someone, you're basically surprising them with something unexpected, and not like in the fun, happy birthday kind of way. It's more like unexpected and dropping something on them that they're totally unprepared for and can leave them feeling caught off guard. For example, if you've ever had someone drop a surprise on you at the last minute, you might say, "Don't spring any last-minute changes on me." This shows that you're not too thrilled about being surprised with something unexpected, especially when it throws off your plans. Or this example, he sprang a big announcement on us at the meeting. Here, it's clear the announcement was completely unplanned and caught everyone off guard. This phrasal verb is really common in informal settings, especially when you're talking about those moments when you're hit with something surprising and maybe even a little unwelcome. So if you ever need to express that someone threw a curveball your way, you can say they sprang it on you. All right, now let's talk about part 6, advanced phrasal verbs about conflict and resolution. These expressions are useful when talking about arguments, disagreements, and how people deal with tension and make peace afterward. You'll hear them in everything from serious discussions to TV dramas. And knowing how to use them can really level up your ability to describe emotional and social dynamics with depth and clarity. Now our first phrasal verb, act up, is a troublesome little verb that can be used for two very different situations. On the one hand, it's when people, especially kids or students, decide to behave badly. Like in this example, the students started acting up during the awards assembly. This means the students were being disruptive or behaving badly, causing a bit of chaos when things were supposed to be calm and formal. On the other hand, act up can also be used when machines or tech stop working the way they should. Like in this sentence, the printer in this office is acting up again. You'll have to use the one upstairs. Here, we're talking about a printer not working properly. This phrasal verb is informal and refers to bad behavior or tech issues that are making life harder than it should be. Let's move on to the phrasal verb cave in. And no, I'm not going to talk about a cave collapsing on explorers. Cave in is all about giving in or agreeing to something after resisting a while. It's when you finally give up and give someone what they want, but only after some pressure. For example, we could say he finally caved in and agreed to go skydiving. Here, the person didn't want to go skydiving at first, but after some convincing and pressure from his friends, he caved in. Our next example says, they refused to cave in to the kidnapper's demands. This example shows a group standing strong and not agreeing to the kidnapper's demands. Maybe they're just hoping to negotiate, or maybe they're buying time for law enforcement to come to the rescue. Next up, we have a phrasal verb that is perfect when talking about dealing with tough challenges. To contend with something is all about dealing with a tricky situation or struggling through a tough problem. It's not just about facing challenges, it's about making an effort to handle or manage them. For example, we had to contend with heavy traffic on our way to work this morning. This means the speaker had to deal with the stressful, annoying traffic that slowed them down. Or this example, she contended with many setbacks during her job hunt. Here, we're saying that the person faced a lot of obstacles and challenges and had to work hard to keep going. Whether it's a traffic jam or a job, contend with is the perfect way to show that you're handling something difficult and often suggests that overcoming these challenges takes effort. So this phrasal verb is used a lot in formal contexts, but you also hear it in informal settings when someone's talking about managing a tough situation. Here we've got the transitive separable phrasal verb to eke something out, which is about making something last longer than it should, usually by using it carefully or in small amounts, especially when you're dealing with scarce resources like food, money, time, or anything that's in limited supply. If you're eking something out, you're struggling to make sure it doesn't run out too soon. For example, we could say he has difficulty eking out a living on such a small salary. This tells us that the person is struggling to get by with not enough money, so they have to be super careful with how they spend it. Our next example says, the injured hiker eked out his water supply while waiting for rescuers. Here, the hiker is making his limited supply of water last longer by sipping small amounts, trying to stretch it out as much as he can while he waits for help. It's a great way to describe someone managing tough circumstances, making do with what they've got, even when it's not much. If you ever need to fight back and protect yourself, this next phrasal verb will come in handy. To fend someone or something off means to defend yourself against an attack, or just a tough criticism. For example, we could say he managed to fend off the attacker with just his umbrella. So here, someone physically protected himself from an attacker using only what's in his hands. In this case, an umbrella. Next up, we have the example, she fended off criticism of her performance in the movie. This shows that she didn't let the negative comments get to her. Instead of letting the criticism affect her, she resisted and stood her ground. So this is a good one to use when talking about protecting yourself from actual attackers or just fighting off criticism. Use this to talk about standing up for yourself and protecting yourself. Sometimes something just gets worse, and for that kind of situation, we have the phrasal verb flare up. We use this when emotions, conflicts, or conditions get worse or intensify. It could be an emotional outburst, a conflict getting out of control, or a health issue that flares up unexpectedly. It's when something that was previously manageable or under control suddenly escalates and gets worse. For example, we could say his nagging shoulder injury flared up during the game. Here, his injury suddenly got worse. Maybe it was manageable, but then it flared up at the worst possible time and became more painful during the game. Our next example says, tempers flared up during the debate. Now we're talking about emotions, specifically anger, getting more intense out of nowhere and maybe out of control. What might have been a calm and civil conversation suddenly turned into a heated exchange as tempers flared. When most people think of the word hinge, they think about a swinging door. Now, when we use hinge as a verb in the phrasal verb hinge on or hinge upon something, we're talking about an outcome, like that door is swinging into something specific. To say something hinges on something means it depends entirely on that single thing, and that factor determines the success or failure of something. It's like a big, important decision or situation that's held together by this one tiny thing. Our first example says, the success of the plan hinges on how much we can fundraise. This shows that the entire plan's future depends on how much money they raise. If the fundraising doesn't go well, the plan will likely fall apart. And this sentence says, her future hinged upon the final exam results. Here, her entire future is riding on those exam results. So this was a very high pressure or high stakes test. So when you say something hinges on or hinges upon something, you're talking about a situation that's dependent on one extremely important thing. Now our next one isn't as friendly as it sounds. To lash out is when you suddenly and angrily attack or criticize someone, and it's often out of nowhere. This can be a verbal explosion or even a physical outburst. Imagine someone just snapping, sometimes over something small. It's an emotional outburst you probably didn't even see coming. For example, we could say he lashed out at him for being late on his first day of work. So under normal working conditions, the new employee would probably receive a warning or a gentle reminder of the workplace rules for coming in on time. But here, the employee received a verbal attack. In this example, the delivery person lashed out at the customer when he didn't receive a tip. This shows that the delivery person directed his anger toward the customer because of not getting a tip. Pretty intense for something that probably could have been handled better. So if you ever lash out, it's probably not going to be one of your proudest moments. It's emotionally driven and could leave everyone around you shocked. This is a useful phrasal verb when emotions get the best of you. Next up, when you make up for something, you're basically taking responsibility and trying to compensate for a mistake, a loss, or anything that went wrong. It's like saying, oops, I messed up, and here's how I'm going to fix it. Whether you're trying to fix a mistake or balance out a negative situation, this phrasal verb is all about doing your best to make things right again. For example, we could say she made up for her mistake by helping more. In this case, the person took action to correct her mistake by putting in more effort. Or take this example, he stayed late all week to make up for missing Monday's meeting. Here, he's putting in extra work to compensate or make up for the time he missed. So if you ever mess up, do your best to make up for it. Our next phrasal verb is really informal. To muck something up means you've ruined or messed something up. If we change the M to an F in the first word of the phrasal verb, we've got the vulgar version of this. We use this phrasal verb when things go wrong, often because of poor planning or a lack of attention. For example, we could say he mucked up the entire presentation. Here, the presentation was ruined, probably because he wasn't well prepared or something went wrong during the presentation. It was quite a disaster. Or there's this example, don't try to fix it yourself, hire a professional so you don't muck it up even worse. Here, the speaker is warning someone not to make a situation worse by trying to fix it themselves, that they should just hire a professional to do it right for them. When you refuse to give up and want to describe an unstoppable attitude, we got the handy phrasal verb press on, press ahead, and press forward. These all mean to continue to move forward or work toward a goal, even when you're hit with difficulties, setbacks, or challenges. Sometimes it's like the universe is throwing every obstacle it can at you, but you're still determined to keep going. For example, despite being exhausted, Frodo and Sam pressed forward toward Mount Doom. Even though the hobbits were drained and surrounded by danger, they didn't stop. They kept going so they could destroy the One Ring in the fires of Mount Doom. Next here, I have the example, after their crushing defeat, the Avengers pressed on to find a way to reverse Thanos' destruction. The Avengers could have given up after their huge loss, but no, they pressed on to find a way to make things right. So when you press on, press ahead, or press forward, you're basically unstoppable no matter what gets in your way. Sometimes you're in a tough spot, and the only option left is something you really don't want to do. To resort to something means to use a less than ideal solution, typically because everything else has been tried and has failed. So to do something unpleasant as a last option, not because you want to, but because you must. For example, the injured hiker resorted to eating tree bark until he was rescued. The poor guy had no choice but to eat tree bark in a desperate survival situation. Not fun, but you gotta do what you gotta do, right? Or how about this example? After negotiations failed, we had to resort to legal action. So here, the company didn't want to go down that road, but after exhausting all other options, legal action was the only way forward. It's like that last, uncomfortable step when you've tried everything else and there are no other ideas. So when you resort to something, you're basically saying, this isn't my first choice, but I've got nothing left. It's an expression that often comes at a time of frustration or desperation, used when things have really hit a dead end and there are no other options. Our next phrasal verb can help you capture the moment when something just stops working and locks up. You know, when your car engine just dies in the middle of a road trip, or when your muscles refuse to move after a long run. That's exactly what seize up means, when something gets stuck or stops functioning properly, often because it's overworked or stressed out. Our first example says, my knee seized up during the marathon. Ouch! After all that running, the poor knee just couldn't handle any more pressure and stopped working properly. It's your body telling you, nope, not today. You should have slept in. Our next example says, we had to pull over after our engine seized up on the highway. Whether it's your body or your car, seizing up is a sudden, frustrating breakdown. So when you want to describe a moment of sudden failure, seize up is the phrasal verb for you. Let's talk about shaking someone or something off. This transitive, separable phrasal verb is about getting rid of something unwanted, whether it's a pesky cold, an annoying feeling, or even an unwanted stalker. For example, we could say, I'm trying to shake off this lingering cold. So this person has been sick for a while, they have a lingering cold. It just won't go away, so they're doing what they can do to shake it off. Maybe resting and taking some medicine. Our next example says, she noticed a stranger was following her, so she turned a corner and ducked into a shop to shake him off. So here, the woman is taking quick action to avoid a potentially dangerous situation. Next up, have you ever had someone criticize you and you just smiled and went on with your day? Or maybe you twisted your ankle but decided to keep cool and pretend like nothing happened. That's what it means to shrug something off. To act like something annoying, painful, or even serious just doesn't bother you. For example, we could say he shrugged off the negative comments about his performance. Here, the person doesn't let the criticism bother them, brushing it off like it's nothing. Or this example, she shrugged off her ankle injury and kept playing. Here, you've got someone powering through an injury because she's focused on winning the game and isn't letting any pain stop her. When you shrug something off, you're not letting it get to you and just carrying on no matter what. For our last phrasal verb of this section, you know that moment when two people or groups are getting ready to face off? Maybe a physical fight or an argument is about to start? Things are heating up and getting intense. That's where you can use this next phrasal verb, to square off, which means to get ready to fight or compete against someone. For example, the two boxers squared off in the center of the ring. Here the boxers are positioning themselves and getting ready to either throw a punch or be prepared to block an attack. Our next example says, protesters squared off with police outside City Hall. This shows an intense confrontation where both sides are preparing for a serious clash. Maybe both sides have lined up, words are being thrown back and forth, and each side is waiting for the other to make a move and spark off a physical confrontation. Now time for our final category, phrasal verbs about education, thinking, and learning. These expressions are all about how we process information, study, and develop understanding. Whether you're talking about picking up a new skill, figuring things out, or reviewing material, these phrasal verbs will help you express your learning journey with clarity and sophistication. Let's take a look at arrive at something. And no, this isn't about showing up somewhere. but rather reaching a decision, conclusion, or result after some serious thought or consideration. Our first example says, "We finally arrived at a decision after hours of discussion." After all that talking and thinking, they made their choice. Our next sentence says, "The jury arrived at a verdict after 3 days of deliberation." This shows how careful thought and discussion led to the final decision. You'll mostly hear this phrasal verb in more formal or serious contexts, like meetings, discussions, or even legal settings. Now, sometimes you need a quick refresher. When you brush up on something, you improve your knowledge of something you already learned but partly forgot. Maybe it's been a while, so you need a little review. For example, we could say, "I need to brush up on my Spanish before the trip." Here, the speaker knows some Spanish, but they want to brush up and review before their trip to avoid any embarrassing language blunders. Or our next example says, "She brushed up on her presentation skills before the big meeting." Here, she's revising her skills and probably practicing to make sure she nails her presentation in front of everyone because it's been a while since she's had to do something like this. You can use this phrasal verb when you're giving yourself a little refresher on something you've already learned so that you can feel confident and ready to go. Our next phrasal verb, "to catch on," has a couple of meanings, and they're both super handy. First, it can mean to understand something, especially after you've had a little time to think about it or after someone's explained it a few times. For example, we could say, "It took him a minute, but he finally caught on." He might have needed a little time, but in the end, he understood what was going on. The other meaning of catch on is when something becomes popular. I know about popular, maybe a trend, an idea, or even a catchy song. If something catches on, it's like it's spreading everywhere. Like in this sentence, the fashion trend really caught on with young adults. Here, the trend became super popular with a specific group. It caught on. So if you're trying to get the hang of something or watching a new trend take off, catch on is your go-to phrasal verb. Ready to uncover hidden treasure? All right, let's talk about the phrasal verb to dig something up. Now this one is all about uncovering things that were either hidden, forgotten, or maybe just waiting to be found. Think of it like a treasure hunt, but with a lot less sand and a lot more research. When you dig something up, you're putting in the work to discover something that wasn't easily accessible or known before. For example, the reporter dug up some old emails related to the case. Here, the reporter went on a bit of a search and uncovered some hidden emails that were perhaps important to the case. The reporter wasn't actually digging, but was definitely doing some investigative work. Our next example says, "She dug up her grandmother's recipe from an old cookbook." In this case, she uncovered a recipe that was hidden away in the cookbook. Maybe no one's even picked up the book in ages. So when you're uncovering hidden gems or doing some deep research to find something valuable or forgotten, you could say you're digging it up. Our next phrasal verb has nothing to do with swimming. To dive in or dive into something means to start doing something enthusiastically and without hesitation. You're not just dipping your toe in, you're going all in and ready to give it your full attention and commitment. For example, as soon as dinner arrived, everyone dove in. Here you've got a group of people who didn't wait a second. They just started eating right away, probably with some serious enthusiasm. Or this one, he dove into the project with a lot of enthusiasm. This means he didn't waste time. He started the project with a lot of energy. So when you're starting something with full force, you're diving in. Let's talk about growing out of something. And no, we're not talking about planting flowers here. This phrasal verb, grow out of something, means to stop doing something as you mature or get older, like childhood habits and fears, or also can mean to become too big for something. Using our first definition, we could say, he grew out of his fear of sleeping in the dark. As he got older, he just stopped being afraid of the dark. It's that kind of childhood fear that usually fades as you mature and realize that there are no monsters under the bed, they're all in your head. Our second definition says, our son has grown out of the clothes we bought last year. Remember when your kid could fit into all those cute little outfits, but now they can't? Yeah, it happens. Kids grow. Our next transitive and separable phrasal verb is to mull something over. This means to think carefully about something over time, especially before making a decision. For example, we could say, I need to mull this over before giving an answer. This means the person isn't rushing to make a decision. They need to take some time to think carefully before responding. And there's this example: he mulled it over for days before responding. He took a long time, days in fact, to carefully think about the situation before replying. Next time you're faced with a tough decision, you might need to mull it over for a while. Here we've got a phrasal verb with two useful meanings. To piece something together means to understand something by putting together different bits of information, or to assemble something. We often use this phrasal verb in the context of solving problems or understanding complex situations. For example, we could say the detective pieced together the clues to solve the case. Using our second definition, we could say the archaeologists pieced together the shattered pottery. So here, the archaeologists, scientists who study the things people made in the past, assembled or put together the broken pieces of pottery. If you completely trust or believe in something, you swear by it, often because you've had personal experience with it. To swear by something is transitive and inseparable, and we use this when we strongly believe something is effective or reliable. For example, she swears by that brand of skincare products. This means she really believes that brand is the best. Maybe it's worked wonders for her. Our next example says, I swear by the study methods presented in this playlist. Here I'm telling everyone that I think these methods are super effective based on my nearly 2 decades of ESL teaching experience. So when you swear by something, you're pretty much saying, this works, trust me. Finally, ever have those moments when you're just not really there? That's when you zone out. It means you stop paying attention or just lose your focus, usually without meaning to. Maybe you're daydreaming or just distracted by something else. For example, we could say, I zoned out during the long lecture. Here, you're admitting that your mind wandered off and you couldn't focus. Or this example, he tends to zone out when his parents are talking to him. This means he loses focus, probably because his mind is somewhere else, like wishing he was playing Brawl Stars instead of listening to his parents talk. So if you made it this far in the video without zoning out, congratulations. You've just powered through 100 advanced phrasal verbs, and that's no walk in the park. Remember, don't worry about mastering them all at once. Come back, review, and pick a few to focus on each week to slowly build out your advanced English vocabulary. And as always, you are more than welcome to leave example sentences in the comments. See you in the future.